So looking forward to this session on all the different organisations from around the world who are representing us and caring for us. But before we start the session, I'd just like to invite Sylvie up to the front.
Thank you. Oh, no, I'm not getting married, even though I
Ashley, you need to have a photograph.
she doesn't want to
How's that? I thought I was hiding behind you know I don't like that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without all.
Come this way, actually.
I'm just going to read these so what the picture
Well, at least I've been able to see them, that's the main thing. So a really warm welcome to the session, and again welcome to those of you joining us online. I hope you've enjoyed the morning and the previous sessions today. Just to introduce our first speaker, and I'll hand over to Ashley for the rest of the session. So could I invite Rachael, Webb and Rachael Thompson to join us. Thank you.
Right, so I'm going to talk about people with dementia, Admiral nurse surveys. So this lovely little gentleman here, you might wonder, Admiral nurses, what's to do with it? It's nothing to do with boats, which is good because I don't do boats. But his family set up Dementia UK, because it's called something else, but he was referred to as Admiral Joe, so they took on the Admiral nurses. It's a bit like a nickname for this gentleman and his family who were named in his honour. So, what do Admiral nurses do? Very good question. Trying to fit it on one slide. In a typical week, I can fill about 12. So basically, we're dementia specialist nurses, supported by the charity Dementia UK. So we have some Admiral nurses that what we call work on the ground, so they work with local communities. And then we also have Admiral nurse helpline, and then Rachael and I specialise in doing dementia, and we have other Admiral nurses that specialise in other things. So it's quite a broad spectrum of stuff that we do, but we're basically there to support families and carers for people with any kind of dementia. And to say we work across a number of different settings. If I studied and told them all, you'd still be here. So, the Lewy body service, which is just Rachael and I, Rachael originally, and then I came along to help, was started in 2019 alongside with the Lewy Body Society. So Rachael's funded by the Lewy Body Society with Jacqui involved, and we offer virtual online support, telephone support to the whole of the UK. Our referrals come via our helpline, so we have the National UK Dementia Helpline. People phone those. We've done some training with staff on there who pick up, so it can be any type of dementia phone in, and obviously for dementia Lewy body, they kind of go, ooh, what a specialist service. So not everybody comes to us, and we also have quite a new service that Dementia Care started, which is what we call close to home clinics, so people can pre-book appointments to see an Admiral nurse via Zoom. So that's a new thing. So, in terms of people go, well, what's the difference between an Admiral nurse, dementia navigators or dementia advisors, this, that, and the other. So it's kind of where do we fit in the system as such. So animal nurses, we're the bit at the top of the pyramid, and then other services underneath. So at the bottom, you've got the healthcare professionals. So they're other services, and then it kind of cascades up and people get referred on if need be, and eventually, hopefully, they find us. So in terms of our referral pathway, as I said, people contact the Admiral nurse, dementia helpline, or the close to home clinics, who offer them support, so they don't just go, you can see the specialist. So they offer support, advice. Sometimes that's enough for that person at that particular time. It might be something that they need to go look away with it. It's a different service to what we could offer. If there's quite complex needs, and there's people struggling and they feel as though they need some ongoing support, then they're referred in to us, and we do initial assessment with them and then see what type of support we can help them with. In terms of type of support, we put kind of psychoeducation. We have a start program we do couples work, or we do a psychosocial group. Basically, we support people, we listen. We use these terminologies and headings because we can provide evidence based against that, but essentially we listen and we support people. So there's no 2 days the same, there's no 2 people the same. We all know we're doing dementia. It is very different for each individual, so what we do with people is different. So it's hard for me to put it on one slide to say I do X, Y, and Z, because it is very different how we support people. So, we do have referral criteria. I only work 3 days. And then there's Rachael, so obviously you can imagine it's 1.5 of us essentially. We would just become completely overwhelmed if we took everybody on. So we do take those with more complex needs. So we look at them, when we look at them, is are people struggling to manage some of the core symptoms, hallucinations, delusions, do need specialist advice, because when they phone the helpline, it's just a phone call. The helpline is for carers to phone in, the helpline don't contact carers afterwards. Obviously carers can use the helpline as often as they like, but there's 12 nurses a day work on shift, so you're not going to get the same person all the time, so there's no building up that therapeutic relationship using that way. Sometimes it's the carers are in stress, adjusting to diagnosis, they've got lots of questions that may not have been able to answer. We have a lot of online diagnosis is given. People struggle with that, not having that face-to-face, that chance to ask the doctor the questions. So, there's that kind of things. And then obviously with comorbidities with Parkinson's. And obviously this morning we went through all the medications, as you saw how complicated it was. So we can kind of help people kind of navigate which is the main symptom, which is the most problematic. Is there something we can do to manage the hallucinations environmentally before we go to medication action? So we can go through all of that with people, looking at the medication with people. Might have had the dementia diagnosis, and they've not really known about the Parkinson's bit, and they're not under any Parkinson's services, so we can kind of say yes, no, to how to access Parkinson's services. So it has been recently evaluated. Most of that will be Rachel's work prior to me starting. So it's kind of, do we make a difference? We'd like to think so. The evidence does show. So we did quantitative data. So surveys were sent out to carers with questions for them to come back to ask. We've done, most of Rachel has done training with other professionals and other services. We've trained the Admiral nurses on the helpline. Although they're dementia specialists, some of them, their knowledge wasn't 100% on everybody. And then the findings were, so these was for 2021. So we helped 71 carers, family carers, people living with dementia. So we don't keep people on forever. So we do a piece of work with them. It's obviously kind of quite open to them coming back to us. But obviously if we kept everybody on our caseloads, it's just too complicated. But we know people go away, they might have a period of time where actually things are okay, and then they come back to us. So we did 620 activities supporting families, and that can be any of the previous things that I've kind of said with the coping skills, the strategies. We recently But halfway through, we started doing an online group. It's like an education support group for people with lewy dementia for carers. It's a 6-week programme, and we go through things. So we're quite interested to see what feedback on that is. So these are some of the questions that were asked in terms of, how did we help you? So 34 out of 34 said they felt more able to cope, felt more confident, had a better understanding of Lewy dementia, had a better understanding of the comorbidities, so they knew which service to go to for which support when. Increasing their knowledge is always a good thing for everybody. So one of the other streams is that we do training. So we trained 2-hour training to 160 Admiral nurses. And it was to increase their knowledge of Lewy dementia. So it's online training because it was during the COVID period. And these we did pre-training and post-training. So we did an online poll, Zoom, and we asked people to answer questions, and then after you can see that they improved. So the blue was before, and then the colour was afterwards, so which is good. Obviously we did something right in there. So that's a very whistle-stop tour of what we do. But I have got some if anybody wants. These are helpline postcards, so the number, if you forget, it's just Dementia UK. If you just Google that. There is an awful lot of information as well on the Dementia UK website. Thank you.
Any questions?
Do you have any Admiral nurses in the west of England?
We probably do. It depends which parts. They're quite
The southwest, Dorchester, Dorset, Thompson.
I think so. I wouldn't know off the top of my head because there's about 400.
Can I look it up on your site?
You can phone the helpline. They can look up for you. Have you got one of those? If you phone the helpline, because services work very differently. So when they go with host organisations, so I think some of the ones in the southwest are sit under the Royal British Legion. So obviously you need to come in the Legion, but there may be some, I can't remember where they all are off the top of my head. But give the helpline a ring, and we've got a system and they can look for you.
I'm interested for my association. Are you employed or on a volunteer basis?
What in terms of
Yourself.
myself? No, I'm paid, so I'm a nurse at Dementia UK paid.
Question. Who funds this? I'm sorry if you already said it. Is this NHS?
No, it's charity. So Dementia UK is charity, and then registered paid by the Lewy Society.
Okay. Oh, I meant Admiral nurses. Yes.
So some host organisations fund them.
Okay.
But they're overseen and mentored, and training and things provided by Dementia UK. But some of the hosts, like the Royal British Legion I mentioned, the British Legion paid for them. Some of them are NHS nurses, some of them sit within care homes, acute hospitals, there's a whole host of different stuff. And it's just a way of trying to fund them. Just Dementia UK, we don't get enough funding to do everybody.
As a Canadian who moved over to the UK, Admiral nurses are one of the biggest, to study post-diagnostic support in dementia, Admiral nurses are one of the biggest things that is different from other healthcare systems. So it's
I think just to add to that as well, as a charity, we're really keen to embed Admiral nurses within statutory services. Our belief is that everybody should have access, but of course it's persuading commissioners, and they all work in very different ways, as we know. So we're trying to get Admiral nurses much more into the primary care, so alongside GPs, because I think that's where people often go, so that would be our ambition. Work in progress.
So when you train and embed, then does that organization, do you have the cost of them, or is that still provided by charity or
So do you mean the in terms of funding their work?
Yeah, funding on, ongoing funding.
Yeah. So, I mean, what the training is Dementia UK provide that. We do clinical supervision and training because we believe that people need to be kept up to date and supported in their work. So that would continue to be supported by the charity, but the actual funding of the host should be carried on by the host.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel and Rachel. I mean, it's something from the very beginning I'd hoped that we would do, and then in 2019 it happened, so thank you, Dementia UK. Our next speaker is Julie Wood from the LBDA in the United States. Welcome, Julie. Oh, the presentation. I really want to add. Yeah, I mean, I discovered I'm not as good at this as I thought.
You do a little improv.
And I'm not as good as I thought. Oh, I'm so glad I'm getting it right. Okay, it's got your fingerprint on it, that's it.
That's why the tech people are always my best friend. So thank you all for joining us so much. On behalf of the Lewy Dementia Association, I'd like to thank you all for coming, as well as those at home who are joining us too. And my name is Julie Wood. I'm the Director of Professional and Community Education for the Lewy Dementia Association. Here we go. And so greetings from Northern Georgia in the United States. So we are a US-based nonprofit, and we're a small but mighty group. So we appear much larger, I think, than we are. I think our staff now is currently at 15, but we do a lot with that. So we were founded in 2003 by a group of care partners who were looking for more awareness, education, and support, and when they couldn't find it, they decided to create it. So if you build it, they will come. And so awareness is one of our huge efforts that we do. And you might have heard of a little film yesterday when Susan Schneider-Williams spoke about Robin Williams and his battle with Lewy body dementia. So we have been the fortunate holders or keepers of Spark. And so it's exclusively available through us for community outreach events if you're interested. Also for healthcare professionals, a lot of grand rounds and different educational. Mayo has a program that you can do as well for healthcare professionals, and we do joint fundraising events as well. So if you're interested in having a showing of Spark, please reach out to us as well. And I'm excited to announce too that it's now available for you to watch anytime you like for free on Mediflix. So if you haven't checked out Mediflix, it's like the Netflix for healthcare education. And so you can go on, there's a lot of information on Parkinson's, they have different information around diabetes and obesity. There's a lot of different healthcare conditions, and we are the first dementia or Lewy body dementia organization to be on Mediflix, so please check that out. And you can get any supporting resources that you need via us. So we have a lot of PowerPoint presentations, community education materials, so we can help you set up an event if you would like. And so then education, and Dr. John Paul Taylor this morning so graciously mentioned some of our educational materials, and we do have publications that are available both to educate the community and for healthcare professionals. And then I'm excited to announce that coming soon, we're going to have an online community education learning management system where you'll be able to go on. There's a part of our website that will be dedicated to little video vignettes, podcasts, webinars, things like that for you to watch and enjoy. And then there's also additional education as well on Mediflix that we'll be posting in addition to Spark. And then also support. And I'm joined today by my partner in crime, Brandy Hackett, who is the voice behind our Lewy line. Unfortunately, it's for US calls because our services and our support that we can offer are US based, but you can email support@lbda.org and Brandy will do everything she can to connect you to resources or support that you might need. And if you're in another country, I connect with other societies as well so that we can get what you need. We also have Facebook support groups for those living with Lewy and also care partners, and then virtual and community-based groups. And it's important to know that these are all vetted accredited and LBDA trained community and professional educators in these groups. So then research. This is a huge part of what we do, and Dr. Taylor mentioned that this morning, that this has been a really big, I would say, initiative for us all along, is really funding and support for research. So we have our research centers of excellence. If you're coming to the States to visit and you'd like to get some really good care, we launched a grant program in 2017 where we were able to identify 22 centers, healthcare centers within the United States that have specific clinical expertise in LBD, and they also have clinical trial expertise. So when you go there, you're not worried about if you're going to get Haldol or things like this, some of the issues around hospitalization that we talked about. These are people who really understand care for this complex condition. So as I mentioned, the #1 aim was to really increase the access to high quality and of course safe clinical care. Establish a clinical trials ready network. So these centers are ready to go. If something comes to the forefront that they want to look at or research, we're ready to jump. And then also increasing access to support. So part of the grant funding for these institutions is that they offer support groups or they have some type of support for the community. Also, we want to increase knowledge of LBD among medical professionals. So as we heard today, there's a lot of difference in understanding of how complex this disease is. And then we've also really worked to create an infrastructure and provide resources to advance the research in LBD. So a little bit more on that. So our recent research initiatives have included some scientific symposia on biomarkers. We've heard a lot about that at the conference. So we did one on fluid or tissue biomarkers, and then also one on wearable sensors and biomarkers. We had an FDA meeting where we really wanted to inform the FDA of all of the complexities around Lewy body dementia to inform clinical trial design and make sure that that's better. We want to input, the updated LBD research priorities to the National Institutes of Health. So we've gone to the NIH to make sure that they understand what the community is looking for, both the community living with the condition and also the scientific community as well. And then it's important to know that coming soon, we're going to have a research advocate training program where we'll be educating and engaging our community members. We have our Lewy buddies that will probably be engaged in this, and how to advocate for the research needs of the community and also educate others in the community about the importance of engaging in clinical trials. And so we work with biotech companies too. We need to be friends with pharma. And we've worked on really making sure that they understand the lived experience of families such as yours. We collaborate to really educate the community and professional healthcare audiences. And also we've tried to really give as much feedback as we can about barriers that happen to study participation. So there are a lot of things that can come up that a lot of times people are, well, now you can't participate in this trial. So we're trying to really inform that process more. And then so excited to announce too that we'll have a Lewy trial tracker where you can go online, take a confidential survey. We'll get your personal demographics, also what procedures you would be interested in. Are you willing to do a lumbar puncture? Are you willing to have blood drawn? Things like this. What would you be willing to do? And then what types of studies are of interest to you? And this is for both the person living with Lewy and also care partners. And then you'll get a quarterly email about studies that are available within the United States. And so lastly, I just wanted to say, if you have time, I know some of you have been up at our table, we've seen you today, you visited our lovely support services manager and gotten some of our swag and our items, but also for those of you at home and then after today, feel free to join us at lbda.org to download those educational materials or reach out if you have a question. All right, thank you so much for your time and attention. We'll see if I can come back.
Also, now, does anyone have any questions? Or
Was that clear as mud?
No, it's lovely, but I think people sometimes take time to kind of just think through. So.
I did know the name, but that's something I did home because I'm doing research and I find that the health things that you see for Halloween plans, it was quite like them to the but I'm trying to share it. So I'm important.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, please look us up, absolutely. And I think the Mediflix platform is really exciting, even coming on with some of their Parkinson's content, because they're trying to make it, they call it edutainment. So you get a little education, but they want it to be entertaining as well. And so there should be some good resources there. Yeah, and we'll be here, so if you do have any questions that come up, don't hesitate to stop by.
I guess it's something as well that as we together develop the international work, we'll be able to kind of, understand what resources we've all got between us and then share them. So that the most important thing is that we've got access to them.
Absolutely. And then just, I wanted to say too, what's been fascinating for me being here is hearing the similarities, because I think being in the US-based healthcare system, we see it as so different from other systems, but you guys are having a lot of the same challenges around safety with hospitalizations, all of these. So I think that what I've learned coming here is how much we all need to work together to hopefully, make some of those barriers a little less. Yeah, thank you.
The next speaker is from some organization called Lewy Jacqui, are you here? Never heard of it. Let me see if I can get this. Yeah.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jacqui from the Lewy Body Society in the UK. My first slide is to say thank you to everybody for being here, and we wouldn't be able to kind of start talking about the Lewy Body Society without a thank you to our previous patron, Jude Brown. Who actually has spoken about yesterday, but I just wanted to put this thank you slide in for June, because we did need to acknowledge her in this session. So we are the only organisation in the UK specifically for Lewy body dementia. There are various other dementia charities for anybody that's not UK based. We have the Alzheimer's Society, we have Alzheimer's Research UK, and there are dementia carers count, there are tide carers, there are a host of different dementia charities. But what we try to do with the Lewy Body Society is be very, very specific. Okay. Thanks to the donations that we've received, we have funded to date almost 2 million in research around the various universities within the UK. John Paul Taylor, we're funding his projects. John O'Brien, we're contributing to his projects. We've currently got a further grant award out at the moment for another $500,000. And that is purely from voluntary donations. And what we are very proud about as a charity is that we do not ask for those donations. So if somebody donates to us, we don't say, okay, that donation you made last Christmas, would you like to donate again? That's not how we work, because we think that that puts people off. Yeah? And especially in the current economic environment, it has to be a personal choice, and people have a personal choice. There are so many good causes out there, so it's up to you as in the sector to put your case for that support. Through these studies, researchers have made significant strides. We funded genetic studies at UCL in London, biomarkers at Cambridge. These are just some of the research projects. Marzena, who spoke this morning, Marzena's PhD, she then went on to work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and there are more important things coming from Marzena's work. And I'm sure you'll hear more about that over the coming months. Diagnosis. In the UK, only 6% of people with a diagnosis get a diagnosis of Lewy body as a subtype, where the actual figure is around 10 to 15%. So in May every year within the UK, there is a Dementia Awareness Week from the Alzheimer's Society. And we support that and we join in. And the theme this year was diagnosis, and especially after COVID, because diagnostic rates went down. There is no point in trying to get the diagnostic rates up if you just get a diagnosis of dementia. If you had a diagnosis of cancer, you would not leave a doctor's surgery without knowing whether it was prostate cancer, breast cancer, because every different cancer requires different medication, different treatment, different support. And that is absolutely why a diagnosis of Lewy body dementia is so important. As we say here, this is a quote from Dr. J. Admiral, who is sitting in the room upstairs in the scientific strand, Associate Professor in Psychiatry of Older Age at the University of Southampton. I'll let you read that. Jay was one of our researchers that we funded. And as you can see there, his reason for wanting to be involved in research. So what impact as a small charity have we made? The Lewy Body Society is myself, the trustees, Ashley, Lynn, Carol, Lizzie. Kate works with us on an ad hoc basis, and that's it. And that is the model that we have chosen. And that means that more pence of every pound that we receive goes into research, goes into promoting awareness. We do not have a bricks and mortar office, because we don't believe that people put on the running shoes, the trainers, to go out and run a 10K, and that money goes to pay, oh yeah, new carpet, lights. No. No, because who is that going to help? During Dementia Awareness Week in May, we saw a 50% increase in the number of calls that we took. Or I should say that took. During lockdown, we held over 100 Zoom calls. A mixture of webinars, which can be found on our YouTube channel. And those ranged from just being a coffee morning, or to having professionals like John Paul Taylor, Dr. Erisima Leroy, on those calls to do presentations. We've seen a huge increase in the demand for our information packs, which are available free online to download, but we do appreciate that not everybody has a printer. And you can email us and we will put you a packet in the post. We have a lot of literature, new literature, thanks to Rachael, that is dual branded with Dementia UK. And that literature has been produced by speaking to family carers and people living with the diagnosis. It's not just something that we have written. One good thing that came out of lockdown was One Dementia Voice. One Dementia Voice is a coalition of dementia charities within the UK, and the CEOs meet once a month on Zoom. So that ranges from the Alzheimer's Society, Dementia UK, and us. And we are on that call thanks to Chris. Because Chris contacted the CEO of the Alzheimer's Society, said, you need to include the Lewy Body Society. I then got an invitation for a Zoom call with the CEO. And then I got a hug at the last conference. Carers Week, which was, I think, 2 weeks. Was it last week, Rachel? Last week in London. was the first time that we had participated in this event. It was phenomenal, from raising awareness. We had carers who were on a Zoom call with the Care Minister, no charity members, it was just the Care Minister and carers. We had carers on a call with the Shadow Care Minister, and Heather was on that call. So that was giving a voice to those family carers. We went to Parliament and we had a drop-in session. We had 65 MPs and peers came. For anybody that doesn't know the political system here, but one of the political parties, the Liberal Democrats, the leader came in, looked down the list. We were the only dementia charity involved of the 7 charities. Said, yeah, Carers UK. He said, Lewy Body Society, I don't know them. He said, yeah, I'd like to meet them. He came and spoke to us. It was really quite a bit. The carers that were with us, with me and Rachael, the constituency MPs came. The day after, one of the constituency MPs wrote a letter to the Health Minister, literally demanding better support for family carers, especially with body dementia. We are now an NIHR, National Institute for Health Research, non-commercial partner. What does that mean? That means that people who are projects that are successfully awarded a grant from us can apply for extra funding from NIHR, because our projects have gone through a robust review process. Every application that comes in is reviewed by 3 external reviewers, many of them sat upstairs, plus 2 lay reviewers as well. We have Dotty Days. Dotty Days has been moved so that we didn't clash with Carers Week, especially on social media, and that is, this year will be on the 27th of June. As you can see, so many people in the room wearing spots. And we try to kind of go virtual, kind of go mad on social media with spots. We're extremely proud to be a member of the Association of Medical Research Charities and to have a representative in the room. Wave to everybody, Carol. From the Association of Medical Research Charities, who is one of our lovely trustees as well. As a member of the Association of Medical Research Charities, we have to go through an audit, and I'm extremely pleased to say that we passed.
So was I.
Exactly. A scarf for Lewy, more to come about that. And a big thank you to all our fundraisers. So here are a few pictures from Carers Week. So myself, Rachael, and 2 of our family carers, myself and a couple of the MPs. Notice the same dress, I've recycled. A scarf for Lewy. Yay. Please stand up, Vicky. And please give Vicky a round of applause. This is something that has just kind of taken off. It's become more than knitting a scarf. We have had scarves come in from the US, from Ireland, from everywhere, and the letters that are coming in with the scarves, that the scarves have become so meaningful to people, that these colours represent memories of people. So it's just been phenomenal. And Thursday, the 22nd of September, we will be at the Royal Albert Hall in London. Fingers crossed that Vicky's sewn them all together. You know, Vicky was telling us that even the postman delivering all these scarves to the great care home that's accepting them for us, and she's sewing them all together, said, Lewy's very popular. you know, he's getting a lot of deliveries. As you can see here, we've got a few celebrities that have joined the project. Dame Prue Leaf for UK people, Anne Robinson, who I'm sure you will all know, and Paula Wilcox for the people of a certain age, from Man About the House, and more recently from Coronation Street, for any Silk fans. And here's one of my local knitting groups. And what makes this picture special for me is that I think 90% of the ladies in that group knew my parents.
Aww.
So every scarf that they gave me, 36 scarves. I know. And they're still knitting. I've got more to pick up. Was so meaningful. Even this lady who was a next door neighbour, this lady that I'd known since I was like 2 years old. You know, so to get those scarves from them was like really meaningful. And that's a thank you from the Lewy Body Society. Any questions?
I always say when I'm knitting, I can't knit. And I once said to a friend who does knit, I can't even load the sticks. So I need to learn the terminology.
Casting on the stitches.
Yeah, casting on the needle, she said. Load the sticks. No question, there's got one of the back one.
So I heard Albert Hall and scarves. What's happening?
So the scarves are being sewn together by Vicky.
Nice.
I don't think she knows what we're going to do.
Oh, so then we will have between 50 and 80, 70, 80 volunteers.
Yeah, I think we're going to need about 80 volunteers.
80 volunteers, and we have permission from the Royal Albert Hall in London, which is basically, it's a standalone building and it's round.
Yeah.
And we will be holding the scarves literally around. There'll be one scarf.
Yes, one scarf.
Stitched together to form one band. And then the volunteers, the volunteers hold the scarf and go all the way around. In fact, I think we'll go around twice.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's just an awareness event.
Yeah, and we are currently on with the awareness raising campaign, and we get it on the TV and we get it in the press.
That's fantastic.
So all of you, you're going to put your Dotty Days clothing on and come down to London on the 27th of September.
Yeah.
So after the event, the scarves will be taken apart again, and they will either go to refugee camps or the homeless. So they won't be discarded, and people sew much effort into them.
My question is, can I invite Vicky up for a photo? We have, this is one of the scarves, and we can have
Oh, that's amazing.
all of you, as many as we can,
I had a message from
and anyone else who wants to get in the photo, come in. If you want to be in the photo, please come in.
Yeah.
The dots, please. Anyone who's dotting, please come in. As many as you can. You know Joe from Joe King's Jocelyn? His nanny married him.
I didn't understand.
Would anyone else like to be in this photo? Jose, come on. Canada, come this is a group shot. Come on, anyone wants to be in the please come in. Come on, please. This is for everybody. Come on, in you come. Please come in. My question is, please come in. Don't say so. Join us in this. Please. I know what you're doing. I can see what you're doing. Please. Oh, okay, mother. If you want to come in and be you'd be very welcome. Come on. No one. Is everyone in? In you get? No, Becky, don't you dare. No.
Do you want to get lost, love?
No. Are you okay? Do you want to stand up or do you want to kneel?
Yes, I'm okay.
You're all right. Okay. Do you want to stand up?
quite good. You have to get behind the stuff.
Nobody's being
It's fine. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, we just put the scarf, there you go, and you can come in as well. There you go. Now we have, there you go. Okay. No, actually, come on, you're very tall. Right, everyone this way. Now we're in.
We are going.
Don't And now we it took her a month. Only
Thank you. I'm very happy behind the scenes.
As a mama, we're always going to take
Oh, I know. Well,
and never end.
Yeah.
So I always feel like if you're involved, you need to.
Yeah.
My dog is separate.
Okay, everybody, we just, hello? We're not done quite yet.
Wow.
Seriously. We'll put it on social media.
Who's doing all this?
Well, we can send it to you. Just before we move on to the next session, we'd just like to do 2 small presentations. One of our ambassadors has been with us from the very beginning. And he's going to look away at this. Ken, we'd just like to present you with this very small token of thanks. We could not come to Newcastle for the conference and not present Ken with something. And
Well, we'll do another presentation at the end of the session.
yeah, but we've got one other presentation, but the lady is not here. So.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Jacqui. So, with great pleasure, our next speaker is Norma Loeb from the US to talk to us about the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Centre. Have I pronounced your surname?
You did.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Welcome, Norma.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. I just want that's a hard act to follow. I see the wire. I am not going to be using slides. I want to speak more or less one-on-one, which is what's important to me and which is why I founded my organization to begin with. So it'll be 2 parts. The beginning, I will tell you why I founded the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center, and then we'll show you some parts of the website which I think can be helpful to everyone. So the picture that's up is in black and white because it's a few years ago. It's my mom with me, and we were very close. And the reason I love this photo is because my mom really wasn't a hugger as an adult. But this one I just love it because it shows the love that we had between us all the time. We were very close. So when my mom was 75, she said to me when I was at her home that she was having trouble doing her checkbook. And she was amazing with numbers, so that was unusual. And I looked at the checkbook and she was having trouble. And she went to her internist who told her that it was a normal part of aging. So that was the beginning of wrong information, of misdiagnosis, of frustration for 3.5 years. from geriatricians to neurologists, from being misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's. Then 2 years later, at that same geriatrician saying, I want to watch your mom walk. I said, why? I think she has Parkinson's. I said, oh my God, thinking that was the worst thing, not knowing anything. And I watched her walk and she was shuffling like she always had. And he said, it's the way she walks. I said, she's been walking like that for the past 2 years that I've been bringing her here. He hadn't noticed and I had no idea. Now I would notice it with when I closed because I'm so aware of it. But it just showed me how much I didn't know. And again, we went from doctor to doctor. I will leave out major frustrations, major aggravation. I'll mention a couple of things. When she couldn't sleep well and Ambien was given to her, I happened to have slept in the same room with her at that time. She was right on the floor that night with one pill. She was once given another antipsychotic once, made her much worse. So I finally heard a neurologist at a major medical center in New York mention Lewy body to somebody else. And then I went back and looked online. There was very little information. And the truth is, this morning I just realized that it's been 25 years. And so there really wasn't much information out there. And I realized that from my mom turning 75, she had this disease for 18 long years. She lived with me for the last 7 years and she was bedridden all of that time. And so I really know she had almost every symptom except for 2 when I had looked it up. And when I mentioned it to a doctor, oh dear, that's very rare. That was, I'm saying it with that condescending face because that's how it was said to me. But I continued and continued until I got the right information, until I can get her on the right medication. And those 18 years, from the very beginning of her not being able to do her checkbook and with her living with me, I was literally with her to her last breath. So I know the disease from every single stage. I researched everything, tried to get as much information as I could within that year. I remember somebody saying to me, why didn't you speak to a social worker who could have helped you with a lot of things? And I said, who knew to see a social worker? And where would I find a social worker? So that's what got me started and involved here. I started leading the only support group in New York way back then. I'm now leading it, it's now in the 14th year. There was none. And New York has a very big metropolitan area, including 2 other states. And I was really the only person that people was calling. They had nobody else after diagnosis or where they didn't know where to turn. At that time, I was asked to be on the board of directors of LBDA. So I was on the board for 3 years while I was doing the support group. But as I kept answering the phone calls, after I was talking to people in the support groups and talking to them by phone, because then I gave them my phone number, I realized the frustration and how they had nowhere to turn, and they were just, they were lost. They just felt lost. And I just felt there was so much more needed to be done not just on a local basis in New York, but on an individual and personal basis. So and I had so much information from everything I had learned on my own, and why would I want everyone else to go through what I did when I already had it? I needed to share that information. And that's why I founded, right after my mom passed in 2015, I founded the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center in 2016 so that I could show information to as many people as possible. Now, I know quite a few people talked about having a small staff and a small amount of people. Everyone who works with me is a volunteer. There is no staff. I've been doing this for now 6.5 years. We have the only live helpline in the United States, 7 days a week, and we will speak to everyone individually and make sure that they get that call back that same day because we know how important it is. And every person who's working with us has had a family member with Lewy body so that they know everything that there is to know. That we didn't necessarily have to train them, although I could use more people and possibly train them, but to me it was really important to have people who have gone through this. And every single one of our board members is either a neurologist, a geriatrician, a neuropsychologist, or has a family member or had a family member with Lewy body. And I'm also really proud to say that there are 3 people who live with Lewy body on our board. And I've learned so much. So as I mentioned, I've been leading the support groups for caregivers all of these years. But just a year and a half ago, I started a national group in the US for people who have Lewy body. And they call in from all over, depending on the time, and everybody will get up earlier on the West Coast versus the East Coast where I am. And I have to tell you that I have learned more in this year and a half, in the more than 20 years that I've been doing this, from the people who are living with Lewy. Hearing the personal stories and what's important to them and the difficult parts and what it's like for them, what they're feeling for their loved ones and how they are so concerned for them. And I don't think people aren't going to hear that in a doctor's visit, and you're not hearing it in a group visit. So it's just really important, and just very happy to be doing that. In addition to that, we do trainings for home health aides, because as we all talked about, if I'm giving a talk to new medical students or new doctors, they have all heard of Lewy body, but they don't know anything about it. How is a home health aide when you know anything about it? So I do some very good home health agencies do some dementia training. A majority of them do not. Either way, I've done them in person, I've done them on Zoom, so that I can present even just for a half an hour, and then they have Q&A, and now they have a way to connect with those people individually and understand, oh, this is what I need to know. And so I'm going to show you some things on the website, but I also want to say that because I was doing it locally and now nationally, but also I get requests from Canada and now in Mexico. And it's become worldwide. I had a family calling me from Indonesia and having a Zoom with the whole family because they didn't have a doctor where they lived and they needed the information. And then in speaking to Jose, he mentioned about in the care home that his mom is in Spain, that they didn't know anything about Lewy body. And so he arranged for a Zoom webcast. I gave my presentation and he beautifully translated it into Spanish, and it went really well. So I'm very happy to do that. I'm really happy that we can make this part of the international coalition that Ashley and Lynn are starting, because to me, it's so important, because Lewy is not a local problem, it's a worldwide problem, and to me, I want to collaborate as much as I can and do whatever we can. And I loved last night at the cocktail reception, Ashley happened to be talking to a woman, of course, who I had met 8 years ago at the Lewy Body Conference in Fort Lauderdale, who is a neurologist in Tel Aviv. And she said so many of her patients do not speak English, so she's been using some of the websites for information, but they only speak Hebrew. And so what I'm going to show you on the website is we now have 7 or 8 different documents that are translated into Spanish, because Jose translated them beautifully, and I got a compliment from someone who said, I never saw anything translated that well. And now, the neurologist, a wonderful woman from Tel Aviv, is going to translate those into Hebrew, and we're going to put those on our website within the next month. And I'm just so happy about that. So I'm just going to the other way.
always need Daniel.
Okay. Oh, and it's also not, I'm used to touch screens, so I just would like everyone to see, this is the website, and there's information under About Us, our mission, our vision, our purpose, what is Lewy body, and it will give all the information on symptoms and diagnosis and treatment, just as you can get in many other places. Under resources and professionals though, I'll just click on New York for a moment. I'm doing this briefly. You will see we have lists of attorneys, where to brain donations, where to get information, counselors and therapists and doctors, and under doctors, there's lists of neurologists who in New York specifically, who I know the disease. So we have that for 3 states, and also, if I go back for a second, and so there's also information on physical therapists, on yoga, on drumming, on art and in dance, and many, many other topics. I'm used to touching the screen. Okay. So also on here, there are doctors in other states and other countries, if you can see on there. And you can see at the bottom here, if you click, it says international, and we have neurologists listed there too. We are trying to make it could be that some people have moved on, but so that you have information so you don't have to start from scratch. Because I just knew how frustrating it was for me to start from the very bottom, and at least you have a place to start for every one of these topics. And then under caregiving and support, again, I'll just click on New York, but I want everyone to know that there's information on here for all sorts of caregiving wherever you live and for any type of disease, because there's information on, did he say to do that? I can't make it bigger, Daniel, but that's okay. I think everybody can see it. As you can see, there's information on driving, how to have someone stop driving, we have an organization called the AAA who give driving tests in the States. How to help with home care, everyday care, on showering and feeding and anything that you need, meal deliveries and sundowning. There's information on all sorts of care, because I didn't want people to go from site to site for things. And then under activities and therapeutics, there's information on music and where to go for that, and art classes and boxing, etc. I'm going to go back to the home page for a moment. Oh, home, I see it over here. Okay, I'm going to scroll down for a minute. As you can see, what is Lewy body, the symptoms and everything on there. There's also the medical alert card. So I wanted everyone to know that this can be printed out. I'll just show you that. It's 2-sided, and it will show many of the medications that a person should not be given. It's important for people to know it's 2-sided, and I think it's really important for anyone to have if you're going to any emergency room or any. I'm sorry, I don't know why I can't do it. Yeah, it's good mouse. Thanks again. All right, I'll try not to open anything else, but I want to point them out to you. On here, differences between Lewy body, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's. It's a chart that I have to tell you I've hardly seen anywhere. We put a lot of work into this to show the differences between the 3, what's mild, what's not, where. So this is an important one. I just want to point that out. Over here under international pages, you can see these are all the topics, the questions, symptoms, diagnostic, treatment in Spanish. And then we have our French organization listed here. For anyone speaking French, they can go right there. We don't have to translate it, because Sylvie will talk about that later, and it's right here. We'll have Hebrew here. I'll be happy to put any other language that people think would be helpful. I just wanted to talk a few minutes, I guess 2 more minutes, on what people talk about when they call and when they email. We get so many emails now and asking about hallucinations and what to do and Capgras syndrome and all those type of things. And my mother had so many of the symptoms, and I know what that's like, and most of you all know what that's like and how to handle that, and that's what is needed most. I also find that a lot of people, when they call, they may want to cry, they just may want to talk. A lot of times they just need to be validated, like what they're doing is okay. They just need to know, like if I go out for an hour, is it okay? Yes, please, take care of yourself. And the connection is extremely important. What I wanted to show you on here is on the logo. So when I created the organization, I was asked for a tagline, which is bringing awareness, supporting with love. And I had a few people say to me, well, you probably want to say supporting with care or caring and something. I said, no, I want to say with love. I want to say with love. And that is crucial to me in this organization and anyone who works with me. I have wonderful board members who are working closely. I have chosen them specifically because of besides of their knowledge and intelligence and care, because they are so loving and kind. And that was extremely important to me and still is. And in line with that, I wanted to say how important it is. I think, Chris, you may have mentioned that, how important our energy is to each other, whether you have dementia or don't, but specifically if you have Lewy body dementia. To me, I have found that people have a sixth sense, and that if you're frustrated or angry, you will feel that much stronger if you have Lewy body dementia or any dementia, because the emotions are felt, that they don't disappear. So if you can be patient and kind and loving, even though sometimes it's really hard not to get angry and not to be frustrated, it goes a long way, because all of us want to be treated that way. And that's my biggest suggestion to most people, to please try to do that. In closing, I want you to know that we're working on 3, can't just do 1, 3 and maybe 4, 3 major projects that will, within possibly a year, and I promise you, will bring major awareness to this disease. And I look forward to working together with all of you in making that happen. And I'll share information as I have it. And what I wanted to say is, at the very bottom of the website, you can sign up for a newsletter. Just put your name and email address. So we'll keep you updated on anything that's going on and all of the awareness campaigns that I'm talking about. So you can do that. And I also want to say, one more, scroll down. Lastly, I don't know why I can't make that big again. Okay, it's in this corner. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay, so the helpline is right here, 516-218-2026. That's a number in the US. If someone has any trouble anywhere and would like to call and they have nowhere to reach, please call us on WhatsApp. And just in case you need somebody to talk to, I don't want you to feel that you can't. I know the time difference may not work always, but please know we're there. And if you have any specific questions or you have suggestions on what you'd like to do together, you can send me an email personally to Norma at LBDNY. I promise I will answer you and be happy to talk to you about any concerns. And I think that's it. Any questions? I know. Any questions from anybody?
I think that's important to think as well. I'm a caregiver and I'm very kind, very good. But there are times when, you just like, well, what? Because you've been together 30 years, like, well, why do you do that? There's person seminar, just remember to always be kind.
It's not easy all the time, but it's really important. I just remembered this. I just thought I'd mention this because I'm still here and it's just on the board. Robin's Wish, which is the film that Susan Williams was talking about, and if, for anyone who didn't see it, was a documentary about Robin and his last 4 years of his life with Lewy body and what he went through. And I had the pleasure of showing the first showing in New York at Lincoln Center before it was released. We had 200 people there, and Robin's classmates from Juilliard were there. It was a big deal. It wasn't the premiere because there was no distributor, but I was just so happy. And that was a few years ago, and it's worth seeing. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Norma. Given time, we do have some time at the end of the session today for some questions. I know we're going to run into tea break a little bit, but first, before we go into the next talk,
we missed the second part of our thank you presentation, and Chris Maddox, our other ambassador that's here. Thank you for everything you've done. I didn't run him, but it's legal driven. So. Oh, yeah.
thank you, Chris and all.
I sent Ashley some photographs of my cats, and she's drawn them and painted them, so she's giving me the originals. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. You can come explain. I know
we have to rest, but thank you ever so much. You're wonderful.
Chris, you've been wonderful. It's been lovely to meet you as well. Thank you. Just in the interest of time, because while Chris is packing up, I'd like to welcome our next speaker. We are truly international. So welcome to Karen Meenan from Lewy Body Island.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Chris, that's so well deserved. The amount of work Chris does, not just as an ambassador for Lewy Body Society in the UK, but also Chris is a regular on Tea Time with Lewy, and your contributions are huge. So before you leave, I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
And keep it
and
going.
Heather, of course. Thank you.
Gankani.
So this is we're developing a third sector support for people in Ireland. And why are we doing it in Ireland? Because you're very lucky here in the UK that you have a place called Newcastle and that you have somebody in the keep. So you have people who know a lot about Lewy body. And maybe it isn't all over the country, but it certainly is in one pocket and it has spread. But in Ireland, Lewy body was almost a word that nobody even heard of until Iracema Leroy. I don't know if you've met her or not. She's amazing. So Ira is somebody I met through the Global Brain Health Institute, where we're both fellows of the Brain. We're Atlantic fellows now.
We are senior.
Yeah, we're senior. Okay. But Iracema had been based in Manchester, and she'd been a cohort of all of these people who'd understood, because they'd all been trained by Ian McKee and John O'Brien and John Paul Taylor and all the amazing people that you have in your midst. So when she came to Dublin a couple of years ago and was in the Mind and Movement Clinic in St James's Hospital, which is the busiest hospital in Ireland, she was diagnosing people with Lewy body. And other doctors and other clinicians and other nurses were going, not joking, and there was that level of unawareness. So she said, we've got to tell people all about this. So she immediately renamed it. It was the Memory Clinic. She calls it now the Mind and Movement Clinic. So it takes into account people who have Parkinson's, people who have Lewy body, people that it's not all about memory, as we knew on the MFSC, Professor LeBlanc was talking about it this morning. It's not all about memory. People who live with Lewy can have a very sharp memory, but they can have lots of physical symptoms. So she was trying to explain this. And then when she did a CLE session, which is the clinical lived experience, so my fellowship was all online the whole time, and we had the CLE experience, which was supposed to be in hospitals, supposed to be in nursing homes or daycare centres, and it was all online. And she explained in November, 2 years ago, about Capgras syndrome. And there was this case study, a real woman, not real names, who had a daughter, the good Joe and the bad Joe. And I'm fascinated because I like stories. And I go, how can it be that there's a disease where somebody knows about a good Joan and a bad Joan, and the good Joan would go out and change a top or change a cardigan, or even just go out to the car and come back and then she's the good Joan again, or the bad Joan, and she would mix it up, and this is how it all worked. And I said, Capgras syndrome, what's that? And then she was saying, oh, you know, there's fluctuations, there's hallucinations, there's visions, there's, you know, and I'm going, this is a mad disease, how come I've never heard about it? My mother had Alzheimer's, and we had the Forget-Me-Nots choir where lots of people present with vascular, with Alzheimer's, with mixed dementia. Had I ever heard the word Lewy? No. And I'm around people who have dementia. So I said, how come that is? And it's because of the lack of awareness. So I said, all right, what do we have to do? We need to raise awareness. So I said, numbers. Oh, sorry. Who's doing this slide? Oh, have they just jumped on by themselves?
Don't you have the?
No, that's it. Okay. So,
I thought you were doing that.
no, it's magic. So I'll just go back to, have I turned it up? Okay, so back. Yes, slides. Okay, the only numbers I could find, because I said, you know, an obvious question, how many people in Ireland have it? And the answer you gave me was, I don't know. But what we did estimate was these are numbers from the UK, these are numbers from the USA, these are numbers from Australia. And I said, okay, well, if we know that there are 65,000 people who have a dementia diagnosis, because I know that, because that's from the Alzheimer's Society in Ireland, then if it's 15% of them, based on this data here, we've got 10,000 people in Ireland who are underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, maybe not diagnosed at all, and maybe they're all in the wrong facilities. And maybe they're people who have just been diagnosed with depression or anxiety. Or maybe they're people who are in Pieta House. Pieta House is for people who have suicide tendencies. Or maybe they've already committed suicide. And I said, these people have been lost because nobody's even talking about them. So it kind of became a mission to try and find who knows anything about these 10,000 people. So this Cutter's 8-step change model is create urgency, build a coalition. So on build a coalition, Ira says to me, the person you need to connect with is Jacqui Cannon. So I had a lovely Zoom chat with Jacqui, and I said, Jacqui, how do you get involved in this? And Jacqui was saying, there are so many ways it presents. And I'm taking all these notes, and I'm going, it's so complex, it's so hard. And she's going, yes, it is. That's the point. If it was easy, everyone would be diagnosing it. And I go, so what do we do now? She says, okay, you need to get a lot of people around you. You need to set up as a company. You need to set up as a charity. These are all the steps. So we did all of that stuff, the preliminary stuff, and gathered people around us to try and raise awareness of Lewy. So then we created a vision, communicate the vision. So how did we do that? We met with members of the LBD community in Ireland. And when you say the LBD community, there are very few of them because they're still not diagnosed. The diagnostic rate is going up, thankfully, because we had the Lewy Body Academy in Belfast. Thankfully, it was in the island of Ireland because at least we were able to say on the map, we are starting to get people to diagnose Lewy body. And all of the people, many of them who were upstairs today, and they were there to explain what are the symptoms that you need to look. You know, the diamond checklist that you're also familiar with. But for us, it was kind of, which checklist? Diamond? How do we find out more about that? See, it's all very new language. We feel like we're learning a new language and that everybody seems to know so much more about it, but we're just learning as we go. So what we want to do is create a specific support for the people who already know stuff. And this is part of this Belfast group here with, yes, you had lipstick on, you were good. Laura always asks that question when a photograph's taken. Did I have lipstick on? Yes, you look lovely. And these are all the people that we connected with. And there's Paul from upstairs, you know as well, Paul Donnelly. And so we thought, if we can just even do one thing and try and start there. So this is what we actually started. This is our website. So we are starting to create a website, but we're getting huge support from LBDA, thank you very much. From the Resource Centre, thank you very much. From the Lewy Body Society in the UK, thank you very much. On the basis that we're not reinventing wheels here. You all have done huge amounts of work, so we are just able to gather some of the stuff that you've given us so freely, and thank you for that. Communicate the vision. I have a radio programme. So on the radio programme, it started with, it was an offshoot from the Forget-Me-Nots choir. When we couldn't be singing in the choir anymore, we went on Zoom, but also I got a radio program going called Reminiscence on the Radio. So it was a little bit like telling stories on the radio. So it was like a bit like reeling in the years. What year was special to you? 1950, 1962, 1969, whatever. And then I joined GBHI and I met scientists and I was going, so there's more to this. Okay, right, we need to do a new one. So it was called Voyage Around My Brain. So the Voyage Around My Brain one included scientists who explained what was happening in the brain when the other stuff was going on. So the music, how we feel good, there was a scientist there saying, I'll tell you why you're feeling good, it's because you've got dopamine. You know, and it was like having these different voices of everybody on it. And then these are all the stations that took it up. So it was just one station, this one here, Near FM. And then I won an award for it on the social category because they said, we've never had people on the radio in Ireland before who actually have dementia telling their own stories. It's usually somebody talking about them. And you know the whole thing of PPI is nothing about us without us. And I said, but how can that be that people haven't been able to tell their own stories? He says, well, normally people with dementia aren't on the radio. But I pre-record all of the shows. So if there's something that said that they want to start again, saying, no, not that. Can I just start that sentence again? Of course. It's not live radio. So we can go back and edit. And that's the whole beauty of having a show that's recorded, is it doesn't have to be live. And everybody gets to listen to their own show back before it's ever going on a broadcast. So they sound tip-top. You know, and if there's something they're a little bit uncomfortable with, or if they've overshared, or if the carer has said something like, it's really frustrating sometimes, and they say, actually, can you take that bit out? Of course. You know, so that it's the power back to the person again, saying what goes out on air is exactly what you want to be out on air. And this is what made the difference, is because it's curated. Because, you know, when you have a brain disease, of course you're not going to be as fluent as you really want to be. When you get a chance to listen back, you're as fluent as you want to be, because it's perfect that way. So it's picked up not just around Ireland, but also LLRC, which is the Later Life Audio Radio Cooperative. So it was also in Tyneside Radio here, and Sod Radio in Manchester. So if any other radio station wants it, I've got, 200 guests that you can have. You're very welcome. So if you ask your local community radio station, do you want some access to this? Of course, I'd be delighted to share it. And this is the Lewy Buddy Academy. We talked about that, closing the gap in care. And I did deliberately ask that question of John Paul Taylor today to see, we're 6 months into this. Is it good time to start asking the people who were there 6 months ago, start telling us, you made maybe 3 diagnoses in 2019, you made 4 in 2020. How many did you make in the last 6 months? It didn't make any difference, and instead of just waiting for another year of the clock to go around, at the 6 month point, can we start measuring some things? Is all the stuff that we're doing here, does it matter? We know it matters, but can you make it matter? Where's the numbers, the research, so that we can get some funding to support what we're doing? Because, it needs to be funded, it needs to be proven. These are the people who were in Belfast. And it was wonderful to be there, because it just was fabulous to see that our logo was there alongside the logo of the Lewy Body Society. And we just kind of felt like we were coming of age. We felt like that we were kind of junior infants, but we were in the room, which was wonderful, sitting at the back, holding the place, and hoping that, in time that we'd get there. And this is the whole thing of communicating the vision. So this was finding a quick win. So we thought, we can't create new research because we don't really have enough people in Ireland to know what they're talking about. We can't really do a brilliant website because there's already brilliant websites out there. And we can't do big fundraisers because we don't have a presence yet, and you can't fundraise without a presence. And we said, well, what can we do? I know, we can talk. So this is what we've done, is we've done Tea Time with Lewy. So Tea Time with Lewy, I love it, because we have every month, and this is actually, so every month we have special guest stars. So the special guest stars are people we have people in the room who have Lewy, people who are caregivers. They're our special experts. But we have guest experts who come, and there's at least one clinician who knows what they're talking about, and there's at least one researcher who knows what they're talking about. So there isn't a single question there that can't be answered. I don't answer any of the questions because I don't know any of the answers. But what I can do is say, oh, I know who knows the answer to that. And I go, Helen Metzger, yes, she knows about caregiving. John Paul Taylor, yes, he knows about this. Ashley Basin, yes, she knows about that. And I'm able to direct people to the right answers. And it is a place where people are very safe. If you want to come on and turn off your camera and mute, that's fine. If you're lurking, that's what the kids call it, lurking. If you're lurking, that's fine. You don't want to join in and just want to listen, fine by me. No one is going to ever say to you, turn on your camera. And sometimes you find that in the chat box, somebody who doesn't have their camera on might put a question in the chat box. And then I can say, on a private chat, do you want to ask your own question or do you want me to ask it for you? And they go, I think I might ask it. Right. So then they guess, John O'Brien was on one time and there was somebody on the call was asking John a question. And there's no professor this or doctor that, by the way, we're all first names. And she's going, okay, John, you know, I want to ask you this. And he gives a brilliant answer. Wow, you know a lot about this stuff. He's going, a bit. You know, really? We got Maradona in the room, you know. So it's to know that there are people who know a lot. And it's to try and find a way to communicate. So what I was doing last night was schmoozing with people who know a lot about Lewy. And I said, can you please give me just one thing, 1 hour once a year? That's all, it's not a big ask. And I will give you plenty of time to do just 1 hour once a year. So I'm hopeful that if all of you in the room, you're all welcome, you're all invited, and on Zoom too, you're invited to come to Tea for Time with Lewy. We've alternate the time. It's every last Thursday of the month. It is 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. our time to facilitate the people in Australia and New Zealand who are getting up in the middle of the night. And then it's 4 o'clock till 5 o'clock to accommodate the people in the US and Canada and Mexico. So that's all I ask you is 1 hour once a year if you want to join us, and you can join us every month if you want to. Now we did some diagnostics to see what do people think. So we asked, remember that, Jacqui, we asked at the end of the thing, and we said, do you find it quite helpful, very helpful, or extremely helpful? The answer was 82% said that they were very or extremely. And if we went to helpful, very or extremely, we're on 98. And the other two said quite. Fine, I'll go with that. So this is all we're doing is on our steps, you know, find all of these things, create quick wins, build on the change, and these are our objectives. Now, after 1 year, have we achieved our, it's only a year, have we achieved our objectives? So it's to raise awareness of LBD. Yes, we've kind of done that because we're out in social media. Build community, support the network, yes. Now, these are the things that are over to the doctors. Disseminate and promote new research and improve clinical services. There's nothing I can do about that, but I can keep putting it out there on social media, keep tweeting, keep tagging people. I'm following all these people as well to try and keep tweeting and tagging to see if it'll catch fire. So we've done some of those. We want to build on the change, embed the change. These are all the people in the room here, and these are all your logos. Thank you for sharing them. And I have one last lovely slide, and I think, Kate, you're going to like this one because I found, oh, sorry, two more slides. Okay. This is a lovely girl here, and her name is Gillian Daly. If you want to contact her, dailyg5@tcd.ie. Gillian is a researcher, a young researcher in Trinity College. They're doing this thing called the COS study. It's developing a core outcome set for research studies with dementia with Lewy bodies. She is really anxious and eager to get as many people to get involved with her research as well. So if you want to contact her, it's an online Delphi study. So please do contact her. Gillian is her name, dailyg5@tcd.ie. Or if you can't find Gillian, come to me and I will give you and get in touch with Gillian. I put her picture up because she's actually really nice and she's very approachable. There's one other thing as well. This book, I'm Kevin, Not Lewy, is written by Kevin Quaid, the guy you met yesterday who was talking about sleep. He wrote it, it was edited by Helen, and there's a foreword from Irasima, and there is one quote that I'm going to give you. Oh, the picture, by the way, was drawn by, this is Robin Williams on the back. It's a Nigerian artist, a dementia-inclusive artist, Kunle, who's also GPHI, drew this picture of Robin Williams. This is hanging in the hallway of Robin Williams's house. Susan Schneider Williams has that in her hallway. So the same artist drew this picture of Kevin. And there is a quote here from Joe Kane, who is the doctor who was in Belfast, whose Mammy Marion did the scarf. He said, Kevin provides a powerful account of how it feels to be the person behind the symptoms. His book is as essential to healthcare professionals as any research paper or textbook. A powerful quote that the guy who has the disease, a doctor who studies this, said, this is as powerful as anything you'll ever read. So this is available on Amazon. Jacqui very kindly is going to put a picture of it up in the Lewy Body Society website, and with a link to Amazon, and you can find it there online. Now, back to the famous last slide. now you've met Gillian. Meet yourselves. Yay! So these are all the people who have been guest stars, or special guest stars. And I couldn't find Kate for ages, and then yesterday I said, Kate, I couldn't find you. So you're all there, and for the people I haven't met yet, you would have been there had I met you before I made the slides. Thank you all very much.
In the interest of time, we're going to go straight to the next speaker, who's our final speaker today, and then if there's any questions, we'll take them all at the end.
Don't worry,
It's fine.
you know, the Energizer Bunny.
So, welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sylvie, who is Lewy body France.
Did you say you have a candidate?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are well. My name is Sylvie Seuret-von Zeppelin, and I represent the A2LCL, the French Lewy Body Association. Mrs. Ashley Baston of the Lewy Body Society gave us some very useful information and advice, and this enabled us to set up support for caregivers and people living with Lewy in France. Let's have a look for France. There are between 150,000 and 200,000 people with Lewy in France. That's to say, 67% of them would be undiagnosed, unfortunately. Our association has 1,200 registered members and 4,000 contacts, mainly health professionals. In 2016, Philippe de Linares, who is our president, launched the very first network for caregivers of people living with Lewy in France. When our association was created, we already had a number of caregivers and people living with Lewy in our Google groups and in face-to-face meetings. Our association was created to provide moral and practical support. It represents caregivers and people living with Lewy to institutions such as the Ministry of Health, regional health agencies, and so on. It was created as well to inform health professionals and the general public through conferences. Finally, our association was created to promote and encourage medical research. Our president. We have no time to overfill. So our president is Mr. Philippe de Linares, and we have an honorary godmother, and her name is Catherine Laborde. She was a journalist, a writer, a weather forecast presenter on TV, and she was a very popular personality. The board of directors is composed of 12 elected members, and I am a member of it. Here you can see the regions of France where our delegates or referents are all volunteers. As you can see, the southwest region is in development. A conference will be held at the Bordeaux University Hospital in September 2022. The financing of our A2MCL association is mainly realized through donations and memberships. We benefit from a skills sponsorship which financed our general delegate. We receive contributions from our 1,200 registered members and from the people we support, caregivers and their loved ones. We receive donations from a few patrons too.
A very important function within our association, the scientific committee, is led by Professor Frederic Blanc, that you know. Professor Frederic Blanc, who is a geriatrician and a neurologist, professor of geriatrics and head of this department, a well-known researcher, is the Lewy body referent for the whole of France. Caregivers and their beloved ones can consult him on video conferences or at the university hospital in Strasbourg where he works. Here is Professor Blanc with his team of specialists. The following specialists and areas are represented: geriatrics, neuroscience in cognition, neurology in neuropathology, biology in biochemistry and molecular biology, nuclear medicine and radiopharmacy. From the very beginning, our association made it one of its missions to offer research grants for master students. Moreover, 3 young researchers are attending here in Newcastle. They will follow the lectures and share them in French with caregivers and people living with Lewy during a national webinar on the 7th of July this year. The medical strategy is another very important aspect within our association. In this, Professor Frederic Blanc and Professor Claire Paquet are committed to advancing knowledge of the Lewy body among healthcare professionals. In these researches, we can see the diagnostic interest of performing a skin biopsy, interest of alpha-synuclein in the diagnosis, the difficulties encountered by caregivers, the interest of biomarkers, the genetic approach and comparison with other diseases, the transcranial magnetic stimulation against fluctuations, the MRI on the murine model, that means legs. The issues we are concerned with are those mentioned in the previous chart, as well as support to caregivers and the people living with Lewy, with a mobile medical team and an application on computer for collecting symptoms. This to improve diagnosis in order to be able to adopt treatments. Conference will be held in various ways. End of June, Professor Frederic Blanc and Professor Claire Paquet will present online 2 important components of Lewy, which are behavioral and sleep disorders and their possible solutions. We've already held conferences in Paris and Marseille. The next conference will be held in September at the University Hospital in Bordeaux, and another one on the 25th of November in a university hospital in Paris. Trainings and supervision meetings for volunteers, meetings for caregivers and their loved ones are held all over France. These meetings are held by our psychologists named Yael Sama and our volunteers. Moreover, we are going to do meetings for people with Lewy exclusively. All over France, these meetings are held the first Thursday of each month for volunteers and the second Thursday for caregivers. A major study was carried out by Mr. Emmanuel Montfort from the Grenoble Alpes University among caregivers. His presentation will be put online. A few words about me. I had several credits in neuroscience and artificial intelligence, and during my husband's illness, I took many webinars online to better understand Lewy body. The Auvergne-Rhône region I manage in France. At today's date, I lead a network of 4 volunteers in about a quarter of my region. Before their retirement, these people were a doctor in radiology, a health executive, a psychologist, and a school psychologist. As far as the meeting in my regions are concerned, things are a bit different from the rest of France. These meetings take into account the different needs of each other, in person for caregivers and their loved ones, online and on-site for caregivers only. The following documents are of great help to caregivers, their loved ones, and their families. The person living with Lewy carries this card in her or his wallet with her or his health card. It draws the attention of health professionals to the dangers of certain neurologies. This questionnaire, as you saw from the José presentation, this questionnaire helps the caregivers to prepare the medical appointment for the person living with Lewy with his or neurologist. This very useful document was kindly made for us and given to us by Professor Frédéric Blanc. It is remitted to the caregivers when they need to understand the medical treatment and even to discuss it with their health professionals. Catherine Laborde is our honorary godmother. Her husband is a philosopher and a writer. Catherine Laborde and Jean-Thomas Stern are a couple who is very much involved in our association and very concerned by the progress of research. They wrote together a beautiful book named Sick Love, Amour Malade in French. Catherine Laborde, who was a journalist, is a very interesting, friendly and strong person who is committed to raising awareness of Lewy body. Jean-Thomas Stern, a philosopher and a writer, sends us a very positive message. If you just have a look. Our ENT specialist is Dr. Corinne Lewy. I let her speak. Corinne, will you please?
Hi everybody. Stronger. Okay. I am an ENT, but I can't speak loud enough. I'm sorry, I am not so fluent in English, so I have to read my paper. But I just want to show you a few things about ENT. First, before I am, of course, care for my husband, who has a maladie à corps de Lewy, and was diagnosed very slowly. And it took about 4 years to have the diagnosis. So I know a bit about this problem. But before I got involved completely, I was ENT in Hôpital La Ripoisière in Paris, which is a university hospital. And my team is still working, and I'm still working with them sometimes. And here you go. Oh, sorry.
I think it's the opposite. The opposite. À la gauche.
À gauche.
À gauche.
Sorry. Encore à gauche.
I can do it.
Get back. Again. Yeah. Okay. So my team is young, hopefully, and just to see here our help in neuroscience, which is Professor Liedo, and works on olfaction and memory. And we work with him for many years, and we have some experience in ENT, olfaction, and research. So, what can we do for people with Lewy? As every ENT, we can work on hearing and balance. We know that there are problems with balance. We can also work on breathing, and it's very important to have a good breathing because the upper respiratory tract protects the lungs against infections, against toxics, and against allergy and exposure to viruses and so on. So the nose is very important to breathe and to oxygen then the brain. Yeah, that's right. So perceiving the flavor of food involves smell, taste, and tactile perception from the tongue and pharynx. Most odorants are airborne, like viruses and pollutants. They reach the olfactory mucosa through the orthonasal way, which is in front here. This is the orthonasal. The retronasal, when we are eating and swallowing, the odorants go at the backside, and we can feel them also with the olfactory mucosa. And what is important that this olfactory mucosa is on the way of air, and breathing brings air, and olfactory bodies, and the bulb, which is very important for the olfactory perception, is situated just above the nose, very close to the olfactory mucosa, which is in the air outside. Okay. So it comes, all of us know now from the pandemic that viruses can go through this very thin bone and stop in the bulb. And in the bulb itself is the central of viruses and microbes and a lot of things like heavy metals. Heavy metals are stopped in the olfactory bulb. So there is a real work done in this area. And that's why smelling is very important. Smelling is the result of the olfactory bulb function. But when the olfactory bulb is injured, the olfaction doesn't work well. So one of the first signs of neurodegenerative sickness are very often problems in olfaction, and nobody cares about it. People say, yeah, I think I can't taste. And so we say, oh, taste, well, put salt and put pepper and so, and nobody cares. And these signs are there years before the illness develops. That's because the bulb has blocked the processes. So it's important for us to go there and to pick up cells And that's what we do for a few years already with the Professor Liedo in Institut Pasteur. And we have published about virus COVID, and we have published about Parkinson's disease by looking at this element, olfaction, and what we can get from their cells, and what goes from that to be analyzed, to be analyzed. Yeah. So let's go. That is my my special point. Yes, concern. Otherwise, of course, ENT can look after formation and swallowing, and try to get better night breathing, and to exercise balance, and there are special equipments to do that, and phonation, of course, and phonation means also swallowing, because the muscles in the pharynx are concerned with swallowing also. So what I wanted to say is, in the beginning of the illness, think about first smell and taste, and just ask people how is it, and then if you can see what happens, just put a bit of vanilla under the nose. Vanilla is a very common olfactory stimulus, and if it is nicely perceived, if it is nicely recognized, and if people can recognize everything without difficulties, it's okay. If not, we have to investigate, and the investigation first is IRM. MRI. So it's not very painful. It's not very. It's not difficult to investigate simple things, but just think about that.
I think it's really important, and I'm conscious of time, but I think it's absolutely fundamental that we have you back to talk a little bit about that at another session, because it is something that is of such interest to how you can spot it and how you can use smell and taste as an early indicator.
Did you not think COVID's made that a bit more difficult, or has made it easier? Because my husband had COVID in the first wave and he still can't smell or taste.
He still can't smell or taste.
Well, what I might say is, just because I'm just in the interest of time, to thank you for that so much, because I know you're nearly at the end of the presentation. It's been a fabulous presentation, and we have loved hearing about, Lewy, Dementia France, and also kind of the specialists in the ENT. What I suggest is that if people have an interest in continuing the conversation, we've got time at the end. This is the end of the session, so very, very welcome to stay and ask questions and talk. But Ashley and I would like to thank you all, the speakers, for a wonderful session. It's been wonderful to hear about all of the international work that's going on from the States, France, from Ireland, and Canada earlier too. So we're deeply appreciative of your time. Ashley.
Thank you everybody for coming to this. This has just been the most wonderful conference. The input has just been fantastic, and the interest and just the energy and the love. And thank you very much, everybody, and safe travels back.
Thank you. absolutely fantastic.